Pay close attention. The news you are about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Jeff, the nations are living a reality show that I guarantee will have no high ratings when this show is over. We have the Pope, who's in the news again. We just got finished talking about him in the last episode. Military scandals, confusion in our nation's capital, and lawmakers out of control, just to name a few as we start off today's broadcast. The Pope starts off our news as he celebrates the feast day of Francis of Assisi, of course, which he receives his namesake, who, according to Catholic legend, was the saint that dedicated his life to helping the poor. As the Pope visited Assisi, a recent tragedy off the Italian coast gave him the opportunity to speak of the plight of the poor. While there, he spoke about the savage world that we live in that doesn't care about people who have to flee poverty and hunger, but who, he said, oftentimes find not freedom, but death.
Now, off the Italian island of Lampedusa, the focus was on a sunken ship that became a coffin for the people Pope Francis was talking about. Now, rescuers have picked up what they think is the last of the survivors of a vessel loaded with African migrants trying to reach Europe. Now, only about 150 of the estimated 500 people on board survived.
Sad. Even without the events surrounding the sinking of the ship, Pope Francis came to Assisi to make his case that the church must reform to serve those most in need. Accompanying him were the 8 cardinals that he appointed to tackle the problems within the church, like financial corruption, which we've spoken about several times in several news reports, a bloated bureaucracy, and the child abuse scandals that have been ongoing.
Now, Francis was elected as a reformer, and according to the Vatican writers like Marco Politi, the Pope has become more than that. Politi said Pope Francis is now bringing the church to deep reforms. This is his aim, his project, a sort of revolution. Now, some say changing the style of the church is one thing, but changing the way the church operates is another.
The pace of his reforms are even shocking to those who elected him. Being on the job for only 6 months, some say he's only just begun.
A shocking warning to you ice cream lovers, some recent information concerning the natural flavorings that some ice cream producers are using to give their product that extra punch. Now, you're never going to guess this one. Beaver. But not just any part of the beaver, they're using beaver anal gland, actually using that to flavor the ice cream.
Amazing. Probably even calling it natural flavoring.
Yep. So eating is becoming more risky by the day.
Oh, that stinks. Now, as we continue around that area, new scandals within the United States military as the #2 officer in charge of the nation's nuclear warfighting forces has been under investigation for gambling, as he's suspected of possibly using fake poker chips at a casino.
Now, being touted as the officer who had access to the most closely guarded national secrets, as well as holding the nation's highest security clearance, is now being investigated for a felony.
He is one of the top commanders who is in charge of the nation's most sensitive nuclear arsenal aboard submarines, bombers, and land-based missiles. Vice Admiral Tim Gardina has been suspected and is the focus of a criminal probe. Civilian investigators in Iowa, where Gardina is stationed, say he used counterfeit poker chips to increase his winnings at a casino that he frequented near his base.
Once civilian investigators made their move, naval investigators stepped in. The commander of the U.S. Naval Arsenal ordered a probe. Now, a retired Colonel, Stephen Ganyard, and an ABC News consultant said senior officers have to be beyond reproach. They have to be beyond anything that would disparage their reputation, that of the Naval Service or of the U.S. military, especially when it deals with the nuclear weapons.
Currently, no charges have been filed, and sources say the investigation is ongoing, and Gardina, a decorated submarine officer who has been Deputy Commander of Strategic Command since 2011, could face prosecution within the military as well as felony charges in the state of Iowa. No comment so far from the admiral, but sources say the use of the counterfeit chips involved a significant, and they use that word significant, amount of money. And to continue on the state of the nation's mental health, we have YPN's correspondent Larry McGee, who has our two-part story on a shooting death and a suicide of two people being identified as mentally unstable. Now, Larry, as you're in our nation's capital right now, we are hearing that the first victims seem to be about as normal as most. Now, are the reports that we're getting now about her mental state official reports or just speculation?
The victim's sister, Miriam Kerry, says her sister was officially diagnosed with a mental illness. And this week, many are struggling to make sense of her behavior here in Washington. While information regarding her motives may be unclear, more information about the 34-year-old mom herself is starting to become available. Almost a year before she was shot and killed by police near the White House, Miriam Kerry told Connecticut police that she was being electronically surveilled by President Obama. Police officials are now wondering if those delusions were somehow connected to this week's police chase and her subsequent execution. Investigators are reported to have spent 12 hours searching Miriam's Stanford apartment seeking clues. Sources say in December of 2012, Miriam was given a mental health evaluation after voicing her suspicions concerning the White House. Reports are that Miriam called herself a prophet and warned that President Obama planned to place the entire city of Stanford on lockdown. Investigators acknowledged that the victim never made any direct threats towards the president and wasn't known by NSA officials until she showed up this week in a black sports coupe and reportedly attempted to ram a barricade. Miriam died a short time afterwards after a police chase to the Capitol where they surrounded her vehicle and opened fire. Her 1-year-old daughter was in the car and witnessed the entire ordeal, but was rescued thereafter with no physical injuries from the incident. Miriam's sister, Amy, says her sister suffered from postpartum depression with psychosis and had been prescribed pharmaceuticals and counseling, both of which she complied with, but still faced her challenges. And also in Washington this week, yet another instance of the mental instability which is gripping the country. An unidentified man set himself on fire on Washington's National Mall. Witnesses say the man poured gasoline on himself not far from the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. He was flown to a nearby hospital, and officials are once again without answers, as the people of the nations who are dependent on their leadership continue to languish and go mad. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you in the studio.
Well, we appreciate your report, Larry. Now, the American people saw more disunity in our lawmakers this week as a partial shutdown of the federal government resulted from a dispute over Obamacare. As of now, neither side is budging, not the president and the Democrats, nor the Speaker of the House and the Republicans. Both sides act as if they are willing to work it out, but also believe that if they just hold firm, the public will eventually side with them.
House Speaker John Boehner focused his attention on a comment made by an anonymous White House official. Speaker Boehner said this morning, "I get the Wall Street Journal out and it says, well, we don't care how long it lasts because we are winning." To this, he replied, "This isn't some damn game." When asked what he was doing to end the game, Boehner pointed at Democrats. He said, all I'm asking for is to let's sit down like the American people would expect us and talk to one another."
Well, if the leaders wanted to sit down and talk about a solution, they wouldn't have to go very far. Senate Democrat leader Harry Reid was asked if he has walked the 100 yards or so to Speaker Boehner's office to talk through possible solutions, but he wouldn't say. Senator Reid replied, "I lived up to my end of the bargain. He didn't."
Sounds like tit for tat. Polls taken concerning the shutdown show that Republicans get more blame than Democrats, but not by much. However, the longer that this drags on, the public will be focusing not on who started it, but more about who is going to fix it. Where's the solution?
Well, our last report today is from Abilene, Texas, where a man allegedly stabbed a woman, sending her to the hospital with several injuries. Now, around 11:45 a.m. on Kirkwood Street, a 33-year-old woman called 911 and told dispatchers she'd been stabbed. Now, police rushed to the house, but the attacker had already fled. The victim had been stabbed multiple times and was taken to Hendricks Medical Center and treated for her injuries.
George Spindler with the Abilene Police Department said at this time it is not believed that she has life-threatening injuries and that the victim is stable at this time. Police haven't released details about who the suspect is or what his motive was, but they do say he is no stranger to the victim. George Spindler said, "We learned that the known suspect has fled from this area. We know at this point that the crime was witnessed. We're hopeful that we can find the suspect as soon as possible, and we are in the process of looking for the suspect now."
As this world's leaders continue to grope in the dark for answers to the nation's troubles, society as a whole keeps sinking deeper into despair. However, there is a real solution to these problems and to stop all wars, big or small: the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Now, this program is designed to heal the hearts and minds of those who learn and apply it to their lives. If you are desiring peace in your life, then contact the House of Yahweh today and ask about the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. And while you're at it, request your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter.
Now, you can do so by writing the House of Yahweh at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604, or give them a call at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on the website at www.yahweh.com or www.yisroelhawkins.com. You can email them at info@yahweh.com, and all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen.
Don't go anywhere. Up next is Yisroel Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.